Ah, stinky bug. Good morning. I'm just breathing deep and having that reminder that we're moving into that moment where it will be more and more impossible to comply and conform with the rules for the promise of survival, safety, and security. So it's only 8 a.m. and it's already 1,000 degrees both outside and inside the trailer, and the sun is up and bright, and it's going to be 100 today. But I really wanted to share this. So as you saw from the title, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what's happening in the world and why we're at a point where we're going to have to make a decision. And I keep talking about the line. And but yesterday, after a series of events, it just made me realize how didn't have anything to do with me. All right, I'm going to try this again. There's somebody driving around and the dog is barking. So, I had an experience yesterday that's been going on for weeks now, and it really got me to snakes. It's just making sure. It really highlighted a point for me, and so I wanted to talk about it a little bit about how we're at a critical juncture in this process that all of us are involved in, and why problem solving isn't going to get us out of it, but rather we have to make a decision about what we want to do when we can't solve a problem. So with that, we're going to take a deep breath. See the guy behind me, and I will see you on the other side. Some of you know, and for those of you who don't know, when I bought my old trailer, I don't have a legal paperwork. So I was just going to drive away, because when I tried to do all this 4 years ago, 6 months ago, I did nothing but hit my head on the wall. And so I'm like, I'm just going to go to the next place I live and deal with it. And then it was brought to my attention that, you could get your trailer impounded and they can take it and you probably never get it back, including everything's inside, because they do not let you unload your trailer, your personal belongings, when they impound it. So that freaked me out. So I've done nothing but spend the last few months to solve the problem. And here's the thing. Nobody is a better problem solver than me. I am a consummate problem solver. And so, but my experience has been is that people have two responses. They either want to make you wrong or they want to solve your problem. And I want to talk about the other thing that's going on, about why so many of us are getting stuck into problems we can't solve. And it's only going to get worse. As I was getting ready to go, I went an hour early. I was actually the only one there, so I waited an hour for nothing, only to be refused by one of those little kids that was a boy, that was all masked up, that sounded like a girl, that was terrified because I'd made a tiny mistake. So he couldn't do the paperwork, and he said, you know what, you can't even come here anymore because you need to just go to a regular DMV. It was the AAA office. And and I was trying, and the supervisor said the same thing. Sorry, Freedom's off the leash. But supervisor said the same thing. And so I'm trying really hard to not fume. But luckily I'm masked up. But my eyes were blazing. So, I was pissed, and I drove home, and I processed it out, and I tried to get more and more comfortable. As I was sitting in line for my hour, I was reading about New Jersey spending the night trying to get into the DMV, and most of those people got turned away. So we're just in a situation where you can't do the right thing just because the system is closed for operation. They're not opening the doors, the electronics aren't working, they're not answering the phone, but you're still held responsible for the rules. And I thought, that is a perfect explanation about what's going on in this world right now. And it's this decision. And so I keep making the joke that I'm going to have to go outlaw, right? I'm just going to, if I want to leave, I have to break the rules and just drive away and hope for the best. If I want to comply and conform because I'm afraid, I'm going to have to stay put. And I can't stay put. And so you see the paradox that we get into. And that is on purpose. You know, most people, when they bump up against the wall, they say, oh, I'm being personally attacked or prejudiced or whatever. It isn't personal. It's an energy that's in process right now. And that energy is, which side are you standing on? Are you going to choose? Who are you going to choose as who you comply with? Do you believe that you are a slave of the state, or do you believe that you are a free person whose rights supersede the state? And that, of course, is when all the problems become, because, you know, as somebody who's a rule follower, and typically I am, you know, the last 10 years, I've dealt with not following the rules by, flying under the radar. I actually drove this white trailer for 3 years without any proper license plate or registration or title. So I never once got pulled over. I never once had a problem. And I had the same issue with California when I was trying to leave the first time. The wind is blowing. And I think I'm going to end up stuck in New Mexico. Because when I did a check of all the other states, my best hope for solving this problem is to stay in New Mexico until or if things blow up or open up. So I don't even think I can do this, right? It's too windy. We'll try over here. So the reason I'm bringing this up isn't to complain, isn't to ask for help, isn't to ask for solutions, isn't to be told why I'm wrong and stupid, all those things that people like to put in the comments. The reason I bring this up is on the last video I talked about survival, safety, and security. And we're at this point where we're promised survival, safety, and security if we comply and conform, right, with all the rules. But all you have to do is look at what's happening to everybody. No one is special. We're all bumping our heads against this idea that the rules are now impossible to conform and to comply with. So even if you do all the right things, you know, you pay the money, you stand in line, you get the paperwork, you do everything right, you know, it's still not good enough. And that isn't a personal attack. It's not a personal prejudice. It doesn't have anything to do with me. It doesn't have anything to do with the other person. It is an energy that's permeating all of us. It's asking us, who do you serve? Do you serve the state, yourself, what created you? Because it can't be both, right? And it's systematic. First, there's tiny rules. This is the process. There's little rules. Yeah, I can jump through that hoop. You know, it used to be you get in a car and drive, no license, right? People got a plane and flew it the next day. Then there's a little bit of regulation. You got to get a driver's license. Then you got to get plates. Then you got to pay for the plates. Then you got to get insurance. Then you have to follow 675,000 rules on the road. And I think the average person in America breaks 5 to 10 laws every single day because there's so much regulation and so many rules and laws that most of us don't know about, and it's impossible to live. And I was swept with this feeling about, and I had this about land, and I've made videos about that. It is illegal to not have a home in the United States. That if you are on any piece of land that you don't have some kind of rental or lease agreement, it's temporary, or you can be arrested if you plop there. We've created a world where it is impossible to comply and conform. And yet there's the only promise of survival, safety, and security is, we're told, to comply and conform. And so one of the reasons I'm talking about these things, as I said in the last video, two things are happening. One, I'm changing. My ability to cope and deal with a lot of the limitations that I'm facing have been drastically changed than when I did this 10 years ago. And the world is changing. And so I keep making the joke about outlaw, but we only have to look to history and see what's happening now. That for those who are Christian, Jesus was an outlaw. Of course, that just got my video banned, right? For those who are patriotic or freedom lovers, the founding fathers were rebels. They went against the system at the cost of everything. And we've settled into this naivete about, you know, if I know the truth, I'm going to be safe. If I'm spiritual, I'm going to be safe. None of those things are a test of character. I know there's snakes around here. None of those things, none of us are special, and that we get to escape the rules. And if people don't understand why it's so important what's happening to others and not just about you, then you don't understand anything. And so that's why I don't like to get in debates about this kind of stuff. But the reality, bottom line, and the reason I made this video is, you know, I'm just breathing deep and having that reminder that we're moving into that moment where it will be more and more impossible to comply and conform with the rules for the promise of survival, safety, and security. We are in such a moment of unbelievable change and turmoil and chaos. And so for everybody who gets up every morning and likes to pretend like, this is not my problem, you know, I'm special, I'm not going to have to make these decisions. Maybe you won't, but you'll be the exception. The rest of us, those who live by the rule of being human in this world at this moment, at this time, we are at a critical juncture about having to choose whether we're going to conform and comply for the promise of survival, safety, and security, or we're going to take responsibility and the risk to find our own survival, safety, and security. And that is outlaw, that is renegade, that is rebel, that is not easy, that is not what most people will do, that is not being special, that is not being rewarded, and that is not a guarantee that everything's going to be okay. But it just really, really hit me this morning when I was, you know, doing my journaling that it isn't about the limitations I'm under trying to accomplish something that I so desperately want, which is to get that trailer done and to get out of here and to not be having any hassles along the way. You know, facing all these issues in terms of what's going on out in the world, with the fear of that now they're talking about how, you know, things are getting ready to lock down. I was told New Mexico is probably getting ready to lock down in a few days, which is why I was tearing around trying to get everything done. When do we stop working so hard to follow rules that were never put in place to keep us safe? They were only put in place to keep us controlled. And that is such a difficult emotional decision because the consequences can be so high, which being that if I drive off here, I might lose everything. And that is, so we're keeping the dog in the car, obviously. That is really, really scary. And so I don't have any answers for you because we're all on an individual path, but I wanted to share my observations and experience right now because we have hit that critical point. It's getting ready to lock down again. I don't think there's any secret about the amount of craziness that's going on, unless you're living under a rock. But you know, I've lived the last 10 years hiding from the system as my way to maintain some level of independence and freedom. And these last few months have really clarified for me that that's over. And that's scary because that's been my coping mechanism. And now there's no more hiding. It's happening to everybody. And we have to decide how we're going to respond. And so when somebody breaks the rules, is that something you want people punishing you for? I think that's the measure, do unto others. If I don't have every I crossed or I dotted and T crossed for a crippled, debilitated, you know, no money trailer, and I'm being denied over and over and over again, is that the world that we want to live in? Do we want a world where it looks like 50% of people are going to have to sell their houses and be homeless? We are never going to change other people. We can only decide how we want to deal with individuals. And do we want to punish and control so that we can feel safe? Do you want someone to do that to you? It really is that simple, is that I can't change anything. All I can do is hope that if somebody sees me breaking the rules, that they will look with kindness and common sense, that I am not a criminal out to hurt and control, that I'm just simply one person trying to live my life. And is that something that I should be punished and denied because I can't solve a problem in a system that was created to be so complex that eventually nobody will be able to stay in the right? Everybody will be guilty. Everybody will be non-compliant. Unless you're in charge of everything, which won't be me and it won't be you. So this was a long one, but it's just something that's so real that's happening right now. I just wanted to talk about it a little bit. So I'm under assault by the 6,000 flies. The heat is escalating wildly, and of course I have 600 million things to do before it becomes unbearable, which will be very shortly. So with that, I'm going to take a deep breath, and I will see you next time. You ready, freedom? See you next time.